Okay, we're going to continue to work on the project that you completed in 7-5, where you created the Door County Wildflowers 3-column layout website. You coded the HTML and the CSS for this website, and now we're going to add to that. So just go ahead and open up the index in CSS for the project that you just completed for 7-5. Okay, so for that project, you created a 3-column layout design. You had your navigation side float to the left, then you had an aside section that floated to the right. We are going to look in this project about how we can change our CSS to appear differently when our website is printed. So if we go, if we press Command P on the keyboard, or you can do File Print from Chrome, it would show you what this website would appear printed. So there's content on here that is not needed. We don't need the skip to content. That's a link that would take us to another page on our site. So that's moot on a piece of paper. It's unnecessary. Our navigation section is unnecessary. We may or may not want images to appear. It depends on how many images you have. And then things like these links that take us to external websites, they don't really tell us a lot of information on a piece of paper. So we're going to make the actual URL of these links appear. Okay? So let's get started. When we look at our index page, you created your link to your CSS. We are going to add an attribute called media equals screen. The media attribute tells the browser in what circumstances to apply this CSS. And when we say media screen, we're saying if the person is viewing this website on a screen, then show this CSS. There's also one for print. So we're going to add a second link here that links to some CSS called wildflowerprint.css. We haven't created that yet, but we will in just a moment. And we set its media attribute to print. That tells the browser to only apply this CSS when we print or when the user prints our website. There's also a media handheld that you can use to apply to handheld devices, but we're going to learn about media queries in this chapter, and we can just use those instead. Okay, so once you change adding that media screen to your original CSS and add this other link for our media print, then let's go to our wildflower CSS. And since our CSS will be largely the same, let's use this CSS as a starting point. So let's do File, Save As, and then we'll save this in our folder as wildflowerprint.css. Wildflower print. Okay, and now we just need to go through here and make some changes. So if you want to follow along in the book, I'm on page 326 and 327. The first thing, it wants us to change our H1 to have a point instead of an M. So in our H1, we had a font size of 3M. Instead of doing that, we're going to use a point value because that is a specific size on a piece of paper. An M is scalable, but we want to make sure that it appears 24 points. That's 24 over 72 inches, 24/70 seconds of an inch, which is reducible, but I'm not doing the math right now. Okay, then we want to modify the header element rules. So let's find our header rules, and yours may be in a different order than mine. That's okay. So my header's way up here. We want to change the background color to white. So we don't want a lot of color to print on our document. We also don't want unnecessary images to print, so we're going to remove all of this related to our image. So background image, background position, background repeat, and height. I'm going to delete all 4 lines of those. We're going to leave the color, we leave our border bottom, and we leave our padding. Okay? Pause the video if you need to. Then let's find our header A. The header A was this little skip to content right here. We don't need that to print. There's no reason for that to print. So we're going to go to header A and we'll type display none. So that's just, we'll make sure that that doesn't even show up on our printed document. Then we want to go to the nav because there's no reason for a nav section to appear on our printed page either. So find just your nav section and do display none. For all of our header A's, so here we have a whole bunch of header A's. We're going to remove all of those. They're no longer necessary, so let's just delete those. Find your main section, and here we have a margin of 210 pixels, but we're going to be a little more fluid with this margin. We're going to say 40%. I know it's kind of backwards. We're changing those to a percent value, but it does work, I promise. And then we'll change that last value to 0. We're going to change our font size in our main section to be a 12-point font. That's usually a default font size. 12 to 11 or so is usually what you will find text written as on a printed page. And then our colors, this is printing out in green. So let's just use black because we're not sure if our users have a color printer, and also color ink is expensive. So we don't want to waste it when we don't have to. Okay, for the aside, we're going to change the width to 40%. For the news class, which is all the way at the bottom on mine, I don't know where it is on yours, we're going to change that font size to a 10-point font. And then now we're going to take a look at these hyperlinks. So the hyperlinks, we said we don't want those to appear as just a link because that doesn't really tell the user what those links are. We are going to create using pseudo elements, have the actual URL generated on the website. So how are we going to do that? Okay, so we're going to add this following CSS. Okay, so let me explain what this code does. These are the 2 rules that I've added to the end of my CSS. One is saying text decoration none. That just removes the underline from hyperlinks. And then we are using a pseudo element. If you want to take a look at the pseudo elements, they're on page 324 in your book. We have 2 that can generate content, pseudo before and pseudo after. And then we have a first letter and first line where we can apply styles to just the first letter, first line. And we'll look at those again later on when we configure tables. So what this is saying is what I want you to print is I want you to print this. So what I put in quotations is exactly what I want you to print. I want you to print a space and an open parenthesis. Then I want you to take whatever is in the attribute href. So if you remember, all of our links have an href and then an attribute. So it's going to print whatever is the value of that href attribute. Sorry, let me get back here. Okay, and then it's going to physically print a closing parenthesis and a space. Okay, so those could have been anything, and just to prove that, I'm going to put a little asterisk there so you'll see that this is what I generated, what I made it print. Okay, and we'll notice it when we check our work in just a minute. Okay, let's go ahead and remove all of these nav styles. We don't need any of those nav styles, so let's just go ahead and remove those. There's a nav image. We don't need that. And then we need to take a look for any instances of a background color, and all of our background colors need to be white. And then I think that's it. Okay, so I'm going to do Command F on the keyboard, and that is find. And then if I start typing, background color, it will show me all of the instances of background color. So I want to check and make sure that all of my background colors are white, and they're not. This one is not. So let's change it to white. And I think we're good. Okay. You could go through and change the other ones to the regular colors to black if you wanted to. But then the last thing we need to do is take this container and we're going to change, no, we're just going to remove this min width. So we're just going to take that right off. Okay, so now that we've saved our work, we can refresh our page and try to remember what it looked like before when I printed. But if I do Command P to print, or if I go to File Print, look how our website is different now. Okay, so the unnecessary things don't print. We could have indeed changed these so that it did print black and white. But notice here, oh, I skipped a content still on there. I must have done something wrong, but we're going with it. Notice the links, the hyperlinks, it configured, it printed the parenthesis, and then it printed everything that was in that href attribute, and then it printed that parenthesis. And remember I told you I was going to add that asterisk just so you could see that I did that. There's that asterisk, and there's that asterisk. So we made that print out like that, just using that little bit of code that we had here. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, that's it for this project.